Hello, everybody, and welcome again to the Richard Listen Show, where we are featuring a panel. This is number 2 of 5, featuring Division 1, the Division on Clinical Practice for the California Psychological Association, and we are bringing to the members and to the public volunteers who give of their time to serve their profession to bring further benefits and value to you as a member or student or just a psychologist or professional out there looking to learn more about ways in which advocacy is occurring, in which your membership organizations can help serve you and protect you and make you feel a part of something bigger, especially at this time of quarantine and isolation. It is my honor to sit with the former chair for Division 1 for the prior year, still very much sitting there offering her wisdom from her private practice. She's a private practice practitioner in Sacramento, California, and also shares love for sports psychology on the side, which I serve as the chair for the Sports and Performance Division for Division 1. Without further ado, today we're going to focus on advocacy and 5 different pillars of advocacy. We hope to keep it short, sweet, and we thank Dr. Amy Ahlfeld for joining us today.
No, thank you so much, Richard. This is so fun to be doing this with you. We've gotten a chance to know each other some in the last couple of years, and it's just really a delight to be here.
Thank you.
And trying something new that you have kind of forayed us into the future with Division 1, doing podcasts. And, you know, that's one thing that's come as a benefit during this time for me personally, is the opportunity to try new things, even as we are at home, and doing podcasts is new for me. So I appreciate being invited.
Thank you. And I have to say, in all my podcasts, the main themes that have come up have been Zoom-friendly fashion and your Zoom background. So I think you're winning the battle here. I've got my, I don't know what, that Tim Allen show with my fence and my background, and you have, I mean, you are ready to go. So you could be doing many of these. You
are kind. Well, you know, it's taken some, iterations, right? Chair, a decent enough background that's not too distracting, right? I don't know about the fashion part of it. I'll leave that alone.
Well, isn't that funny that there's companies, that's one of the businesses that is launching out there right now, is Zoom-friendly fashion. And of course, it's all from the neck up. So we just got to keep your camera high, and everything stays okay and ethical in the field of psychology, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
So yes, we find ourselves in interesting times and changing times, and this often is partially why, the why for a lot of psychologists and healing professionals, we get into this field to make a difference and to be a part of representing our field and the changes that are occurring. And I know it's really complicated out there with how to go forward with seeing people in our practices and how to do it in a safe manner. Will there be, legislation coming out to this effect? I know it wasn't the topic we were going to focus on today, but briefly, just because it is the time that we're in.
Right. So I'll answer this question and kind of take it even a step further in terms of advocacy, because that's the focus today, which is a personal favorite of mine.
I love when you keep me focused, you see? I'm telling you.
Right. Well, but to answer your question, I think there already has been some legislative advocacy and wins for us around during this COVID time. I mean, namely, anyone who is a person who takes insurance or works for a entity that takes insurance. We have, seen some gains both federally, with the federal Medicare kind of allowance to do telemedicine, telehealth. That has, at first, they allowed us to do, to do it by video only and get reimbursed, even if we weren't doing it from our office. We were conducting and doing therapy from our homes, and our patients were in their homes. They allowed that, which then set the precedent for other insurance agencies, insurance companies to be able to allow us to do the same thing. And then that got expanded even more into, to telephonic sessions and for that allowance. And, that is a temporary allowance, but my personal belief is that the advocacy and the legislative advocacy in particular will continue us on, because I think a lot of our most vulnerable people are elderly people, as we know, with COVID. And I don't know about you, but I know the patients, I am a Medicare provider, and the patients that I see who are elderly are in no way wanting to return to the office anytime soon, nor do I personally want to even have to make that decision at any time soon. So I imagine that these wins legislatively that have happened recently will probably continue for sure to be a battle, but may continue into the future. And it's hard to me to imagine in this environment, you know, in the short term or in the long term, honestly, for that to be turned back for some of those.
Yeah, a lot of people have said that a lot of these changes that are occurring is kind of pushing us forward into the future, into
Yeah,
changes that we would have made, but maybe have taken longer time to
yeah,
do. You know, hence my overcoming fear over my telehealth portal or developing a consent form for telehealth. You know, these little changes, even as a professional, can be daunting. So there's plenty of resources out there now, and it feels like we're thrust forward. And when I get a call from a senior in a facility that knows they can reach me because they're isolated, I'm so thankful that Medicare has caught on and
right.
making it accessible, and how scary and vulnerable these populations are. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so
And I
thank
think
you.
we can thank, you know, the people when we think of advocacy, you know, and this will foray us into more talking specific about the different kinds of advocacy. And
Hmm.
I'll share a story of my own personal tactical type of advocacy, but I think, you know, we can thank our state association, so the California Psychological Association, in particular, the CEO Dr. Joe Linder Crow, and Elizabeth Winkelmann, who is the you know, who is also helps us with some of these. I'm going to forget her exact title, but she helps us with a lot of these things. They have been at the forefront, you know, in terms of pushing, you know, supporting what's going on.
I don't know her title, Amy, but I think that I think we should just put a like emoji of Elizabeth by like the bat phone. I
Yeah,
think
right,
that should be her title, because
that's
it's
right,
like she
that's right.
gets the calls for legal ethical advocacy. So most members
Yeah,
out there are potential members. I mean, I just this month, my one key interaction with Sacramento was through Elizabeth,
yeah,
and she helped support about how to protect an adult and adult protective services in a conservancy type
yes,
discussion. So
yes.
anyway,
That
just
I
had to
love.
throw that in there. Props to Elizabeth Winkelmann.
Right, absolutely. She is both a psychologist and lawyer, and her title is Director of Professional Affairs, which I'm remembering now, but she's amazing. And both of them have been really great in communicating to members as well as to, you know, the psychologists throughout California about these kind of wins. And then on the federal side as well, you know, APA does a lot of work for us. So and I think when we're talking, and also even earlier in the year, AB5 in California, in terms of
That's right.
allowing psychologists to keep their you know, independent contractor status, and not have to you know, follow some of the other laws that were going to be imposed. So that is, you know, we were included with that, which was a win for sure. So, and usually when we're talking about advocacy, a lot of times we're talking about, people in their mind think legislative advocacy, right? You think about the laws and the regs, and how we make sure that, you know, our profession is protected. And I think that is a very key type of you know, of advocacy for sure. And we want to make sure psychologists' interests are protected, and that's why we need our state association as well as our national association. But I think there are also other types of advocacy. So I'll let you.
Yeah,
I can talk more about those, but I think, you know, I think as the Division One chair last year, one big kind of initiative of ours last year was to do a membership.
that's exactly what I was going to ask you about. Like
Yeah,
and that's a tremendous effort for any organization to look at, you know, satisfaction internally, and if changes need to be made, what would they like to see, and who is our organization? How do we not honor the people that we are the face of, but also bring in the needs of all of our members?
definitely. And what we learned from the survey, we did some surveys, both quantitative and qualitative, and kind of did this study that was really, the entire year we did last year, and got the results from it. What we learned from both, these are people that are psychologists that are and students of psychology, both members of CPA, both members of Division I, and people who are not members of CPA and are not members of Division I. And what we found was that actually, when people say they want advocacy, they actually mean lots of different things when they're saying that. Because the advocacy that we just talked about, legislative advocacy, that's one way that people kind of appreciate, work in that area. But there's also other kinds of advocacy that people are talking about. And so maybe it might be helpful just to share some of those different kinds of advocacy, and then I'll share a story from one specific type of advocacy.
Sounds great.
So again, we'd already talked
Talk
about
strategic.
Right. We talked to legislative, right? So now in terms of strategic advocacy, that's kind of like advocacy that elevates the profession as a whole, right? And maybe even delineates the difference between what a psychologist does or who a psychologist is versus other mental health professionals. That's what we say, what we mean by strategic. And that's what we learned from our study, that's what people appreciated, inroads in strategic advocacy, which is really how we delineate ourselves from other mental health professionals and elevates our profession as a whole. The other kind of advocacy is public mental health, and that's more, in the area of advocating for the mental health needs of California's.
The needs of homelessness.
Exactly. For our population in whatever ways those are, right? In these different crises that we have. I mean, now with COVID and people being at home and not having access to services, whether that means, their usual, substance support groups, right? For like 12-step groups, or people's loneliness if they live alone, or domestic violence when they're stuck at home and they are in violent situations. So when we advocate for people, the public's mental health, that's kind of public health advocacy, right? Public mental health advocacy. And then the last one that we learned something about that people really care about, that psychologists really care about, is more what we would call tactical or practical, procedural kind of. I'm going to call it tactical for our purposes, but that's where where you are doing something that might be more specific, like insurance reimbursement, or that's more about it within the ins and outs of the profession, more things that we can advocate on behalf of, whether that's rights for psych assistance or hours or things like that are important to us. So, those are 4 different areas of advocacy. And it's exciting because no matter what, you could be involved in any one of those or all of those, or, in any way, there's a place for you, right, to be involved and to also, make inroads in those different areas, which are so important for the profession as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard to be everything to everyone. And I know at different stages of my career, maybe something like a legislative change doesn't feel like it impacts you as directly and personally. So I think it's amazing that in this time of tremendous change, when everyone is being impacted, that they get to see that CPA is doing work for them. And there's even an advocacy day, right? If you're a member, where you can go to Sacramento and be a part of that.
Yeah. And that, that's usually in March, and this year, obviously for obvious reasons, we had to cancel it, but in the future, I imagine we're going to, have that happen again. And also just even showing up at your local legislator's office, that's another piece of legislative advocacy. I would say that CPA.
Zoom advocacy, huh? It's a wave of the future.
Right.
Big. How large is your Zoom room for CPA?
Right. It's great. There's actually, simultaneously as we're having this, there's something else happening that CPA is doing, a Zoom meeting that's on kind of racial disparity during this time in terms of COVID. And Joe said yesterday, I was on a call with her, and she said that there were so many people signed up, 500 people signed up.
That they had to up their Zoom account?
They did.
Yes.
They could have up to 1,000 people on Zoom. So
finally,
there is interest. I think whatever your entry point is to advocacy, there's interest there. I would like to share a story of my own personal understanding and journey of more like practical, tactical advocacy that I think will appeal to your listeners.
Go right ahead.
Anyone who is trying to get paid what they're worth and
Hmm.
has had to
Yes.
maneuver.
My hands up. My
Right,
hands up. You know,
exactly.
I learned that's like the first stage, like, for karate sensei, when they look at like, overcoming fears is like when they see the level of your hand going up,
Yeah.
it's kind of like stuck in your armpit for a while. And,
Right. Right. So
so if
arms
you,
are up, right?
double hands up, double hands extended. Yes.
All
More,
hands
pay
are
more, pay
up.
our value us.
Right,
Yes.
that's right. And I think before as I tell the story, I should start with that I have worked in different professions. When I was a teacher, I often ran into the same thing that I run into as a psychologist, which is this is a profession in which we are a helping profession, right? We are doing something to benefit others. We care a lot about other people and the people, our clients and patients that we help. And there's some divide about, or some schism, I'll say, that when people are doing something that's a helping profession, they often feel like it's dirty to talk about money, or that they shouldn't expect as much, because then it makes somehow you cross the line over being evil from being this benevolent helper to evil to talk about money. And I think that, along with, in being a teacher, a historically female-dominated profession, I think as psychologists now, I actually think there are more women that are psychologists than men. So, and certainly in the field in terms of mental health, including other therapists, social workers, it is a female-dominated profession in general, collectively. And I think there is something to also what we expect, and there may be a gender piece to this, about being a woman, and how do we advocate for ourselves, not just for other people.
Yeah, and speaking for the males in the profession, I came from my mother being a teacher and guidance counselor, my sister's a therapist, and probably a long line of aunts and uncles and cousins. Well, at least the aunts and female cousins, right? So the influence of the caring, the nurturing, and needing to balance out the business side. In fact, I've often joked, word to the wise for Sacramento, that I know that the orthodontists in Canada get a 6-month business course once they graduate from from their professional stuff. Right,
Yes.
right. So I've often said, right, as psychologists, there should be a business training initiation, because it's really something where you hand over a lot of power to the insurers and to other
Yes.
you know.
And part of why we decided to do this podcast, or why this topic for this podcast too, was to just highlight some of these, some just, provoke maybe people to be thinking about things. And I'm hoping that I can share a few things just of my own tactical advocacy that people can take and actually apply to their own way that they manage their business. So given that, rewind to this past fall. I've been in practice for 9 years, and in October will be 9 years. Last October, I was helping out a early career psychologist who works for an entity but also wanted to start a small private practice on the weekends, and came to me and asked me some questions because she wanted, help to figure out how to gear up to do a private practice. And so I made some suggestions and gave her some feedback. And then she was opting whether or not she was going to take any insurance. And so she asked me about one specific insurance company, of which I am paneled on and have been for almost 9 years, and told me that she was going to panel with that one as well. Asked me about reimbursement rates. Again, I know, we can't discuss in terms of a listserv or anything, but we're allowed to talk individually to people. And she asked me about reimbursement rates for this insurance company. So I told her, and I my experience working with the insurance company. So she opted to join the panel. She then came to me a month later. So it was probably September, because she came to me in October and said to me, Amy, I just want you to know that you can probably negotiate up. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, you are not getting paid what I'm getting paid. Per for 90791 90837. And I said, really? And she said, she didn't go into specifics. And I said, wow, okay. Thank you for that information, and I realized for myself, because I had heard this through the years, that maybe there's some negotiating you can do with insurance companies, probably not Medicare because it's a federal, deal, but with these individual insurance companies, you can try to advocate for yourself and your rate. And what I found out was that newer people for the last several years have gotten, $30 more per code for being a new person signing up with a panel compared to me. And that did not sit right with me. Nothing with my friend who is an early career psychologist. Absolutely, I believe she should get paid what she's getting paid. But I realized for myself, okay, this does not make sense. And you know what? I've been hearing this for years, that you can negotiate, and I've never done it. 9 years, never done it. And been a loyal, provider to taking good quality, high quality care of these patients that come to me through this insurance company. And I said, no way. Okay, I'm going to contact them and ask for not a raise, but a increase in a review for my rate. Well, when I talked to the person that, of course, it took me many iterations to get to someone I could talk to, when I finally did, she told me that this particular insurance company was reevaluating all of their rates. And so for her to open a case for me at this moment in time, which was late October, it would prolong and get in the way of them. Nothing would really happen because they were evaluating rates for all providers. And by December 31st, they thought they would decide, and that I would have more luck if I just held tight and waited till January 1, when she expected that everything would be on par, right? The current. And I said, well, and again, I was, respectful, but said, I'm not sure why I need to wait for you to decide that, when I've been paid the same rate for now, 8 years at that time, 8 years, and I've never asked for an increase. It doesn't seem like, that I should have to wait for this. But she said, she again didn't have any kind of ability to change that. And so then I asked for her contact information. I asked for her to reach out to me December 31st or at the latest January 1 to let me know. And if I didn't hear from her, she would be hearing from me. Fast forward, January 8th, I don't hear anything, right? It's January 8th. And I end up, first I emailed her, didn't hear anything, called her, didn't hear anything. I emailed again, probably several days later, and got an email response back that she was on leave and that wouldn't be able to answer. And there were a couple other people there. I'm not going to go into all the specifics, but I want you to know, and I want the listeners to hear, that you all have the capability of asking for a rate increase. And now on my calendar, every year, January 1st, I will be asking for that with every insurance company I'm part of that's an insurance company. I don't think Medicare, I don't have pull, but what ended up happening was I got a lot of runaround from different people, but I finally got to the boss of the boss of the boss, and I told them I was tired for almost 6 months at this point. This is beginning of February by the time I really got anywhere with anyone. And I also said, you know what, wait a minute, I'm not going to ask for what my colleague is getting paid. I'm actually asking my rate, because this is like ridiculous, right, for all of this to have happened and for me to have been on hold. And I also realized, wait a minute, it's not evil for me to ask for, my rate or more to negotiate down from. And after, after doing some threatening of my own, which was saying, I'm going to have to stop being a provider. I'm going to have to let my patients know that because of this, you guys not, getting back to me and not agreeing to, reevaluate rates, that I'm not going to be, I'm not going to be able to see my patients anymore. I'm going to have to tell them I'm going to have to get off this panel. And I see a lot of their patients, and they were not happy about that and did not want me going to my patients, not to bring them into the insurance fight, but to let them know and to say, I'm going to have to stop treatment until we get this ironed out, right? They did not want to hear that. And what they ended up doing was they agreed to my rate, and they agreed. I also advocated for myself to get paid for all of the sessions that have happened since January 1st, when they said initially they would get back to me, to have all of those me compensated at my new rate for. And then and so you're hearing my anger come through.
Yeah, it's coming up. Easy now. Should we go into a mindfulness portion? Time out. It's a Richard Listen mindful break. Yeah, but it is aggravating because I'm hearing you having to go from, like, it's like I'm in the chair, I'm the provider, I'm caring for it, I got to leave it and enter the role of advocate or like a legal kind of battle.
Right.
And it's almost like if you don't have the you have to be the one following up. You have to be so on top of the administrative communication.
Yeah.
Um,
And what I have to do in order to get in that space is separate myself from Amy, the psychologist with my patients, to Amy, the person who believes that she should be paid what she's worth and that I'm providing high quality treatment, and having to work with an insurance company that, whether or not they care about their enrollees, I'm not sure they care about the bottom line, I know, but I know they also want to be able to, not have people complain, right, about not being able to find providers, or about their provider, saying, hey, there's a problem because of the insurance company that I'm not able to see you. And so I know that that's in their best interest too, but it is very true what you say, Richard, about, there's one hat that you wear when you're in the therapy chair with your patient, but this is another one that for me, I have to wear to value myself equally as valuing my patient and, and my worth right there.
Well, that's really it. Yeah, there's so many layers to what you just said, and I know we want to sum up to, with the pillars of Division One. But thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that personal story. And this is part of the gifts of being a part of Division One, is that you get access to clinicians who have experience, who've been there, who are going through the battles. And sometimes, if we don't have a skill ourselves, I don't want to judge anyone out there who's like, I have no idea how to get a client. I have no idea how to discuss rates. I mean, these things are coming up on all the listservs and in aggregate, and now with social media, we get to ask these questions of one another. But the opportunity to learn how to advocate for yourself, how to determine your self-worth as a professional, how to set rates and fees, when you're hired on the licensing exam, about how to respond to a subpoena or getting called to court. You don't think it's going to happen to you, but it happened to me in the last month, and from a case that was 2 years ago. So eventually, knowing how to handle these situations and knowing how to hold your own ground, even in a crisis when they were asking for records, and I had to firmly assert that it would be me, not some copy clerk providing the records, and I'd be going to the post office, that was going to be time compensated for. And sure enough, the check arrived 2 weeks later. So, but that took a lot of learning. That took a lot of, I thought they said they were going to pay me, or I thought they got my invoice, so.
Yes. And I think that the other piece of this is what you're talking about, this program, and also all of the colleagues that you have support, whether you're in a consultation group with, or being able to discuss this kind of stuff, because my consultation groups were really helpful to me in terms of giving me feedback about this process that I was going through, but also my learning and me sharing that with them, and hopefully me sharing this with you, allowed my colleagues to go to this insurance company and say, hey, I want to at least be brought up to the rate that new people are. And so now there's probably 25 psychologists in Sacramento who are getting at least, who didn't know before.
Well, that's the power of the collective. Like, it starts individually, but the ripple effects of collective, of saying, this is what we're worth, especially when there are, right, not to get on, off track, but that there are individuals who do not go through the credentialing, the continuing training, efforts to further the profession and can charge their rate and are not regulated. So the ability to go to, these are relationships, these are business relationships, and ideally partners. I know they want to keep costs down, but if they want the quality care, which really reduces recidivism and really treats illness and doesn't just send someone running for, you know, putting them with what they can get for the bargain rate. They're, you know, they want, why wouldn't you want to send your family to someone with the most experience who specializes in what you treat in, and have that person sitting fully focused on you because they feel cared for.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And that'll
So,
be a whole nother conversation on
yeah,
burnout and
right.
avoiding burnout and things of that nature. But in wrapping up, I know you've got to get back to sessions. Real quick, you know, you're going to tell people how to reach you, please, and what are the 5 pillar goals, you know, just in summation for Division
Yeah.
One.
I think this conversation also came, you know, Dave Lynn, who is now the chair of Division One, kind of really wonderfully organized our study into the 5 salient pillars that we're all focused on this year for Division One. And one of them, of course, is advocacy. So that's why we've talked about that this time. Another one is marketing and communication. Those are together, marketing and communication, of how we market and communicate to you as potential Division One members or Division One members. And then technology, you know, we're talking about getting an app for Division One, creating an app and having that happen, which we're excited about. Networking, you know, which is also challenging when you don't have in-person things this year yet, but we're still, this is a very big focus of ours.
Zoom mixers.
Right. Zoom mixers. I love it.
Zoom cocktail parties on advocacy. One drink limit. Professionals.
Right, exactly. And then the other last piece is career stages, just making sure that we address, because we are the division of clinical and professional practice, and want to really address psychologists through all the different stages of their career, so that we really capture, you know, what a student just becoming a psychologist as an early career person is, someone who's mid-career, later career, and then someone who retires. We want to capture all of that developmentally and be able to give you things that are worthwhile. So it's been really a treat to talk with you. You can, if anyone is interested in contacting me, you can always call me at 916-799-3866, or you can email me, and my email is dr, and then my last name, which is spelled AHL, F as in Frank, ELD as in dog, @gmail.com. Dr. Ahlfeld @gmail.com. Been a total pleasure talking to you. And I hope that others will enjoy this, but also maybe be a guest as well and share their wisdom and expertise.
Thank you. Yeah, Dr. Amy, thank you for modeling, giving your time in the midst of your busy patient day, amidst everything going on, to be here for us. We will share all your contact in the show notes. We hope that whatever stage you're in as a professional, when you see this recording on social media or however you get it through the CPA website or the app, that you share with us your thoughts, feedback, reactions, and questions for Dr. Amy, and ideas for future shows. I believe it's not quite there yet, but hopefully by the time this airs, we will have approval to do 1 recording per month for the entire year. So I think that's the aspiration. So fingers crossed to keep bringing content and value to the listeners where you are, sitting in your home on your phone, so you can watch clips via video. If you have limited attention span, we're going to give you little clips of Amy answering each of the pillars and areas of advocacy, so you won't have to listen to the whole talk, depending on if you got Zoom meetings or kids' classrooms to attend to. We know how busy all of you may be in this stage. So thank you again, Dr. Amy, on behalf of Richard Listens.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.